happens when you're in control of your finances, your career, and your well-being. There's no limit to what you can achieve. I'm your host, Jay Vickery, bringing you on a journey through finance, fitness, and finesse. A podcast about developing your 8 dimensions of wellness. If you're looking to elevate your wealth, well-being, and discover the power of balance, join me bi-weekly, Mondays and Fridays, to learn why money matters, but wellness counts.
Even a hello and a goodbye is some type of a transaction. In certain cultures, you're expecting, if somebody says hello, you expect them to say hello back. You're engaging in this exchange, even just human to human.
Hey finessers! Welcome to another episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse, where we elevate your wealth and wellness. I'm your host, Jay Vic, and thank you for joining me for Savvy Scholar Sunday, where industry experts share their insights on building wealth, managing stress, and living a balanced life. Our guest today is Chazzè Roberts, the founder of CPR Counseling. Chazzè is a licensed marriage and family therapist with an impressive educational background, holding degrees in marriage and family therapy from Northwestern University, as well as employee and labor relations and psychology from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Chazzè has a wealth of experience working with a wide range of issues, including adoption, anger management, divorce, life stage transitions, and much more. In this 2-part episode, we'll be diving into the impact of financial strain on self-identity and our relationships. Whether you're dealing with financial stress yourself or just want to better understand its effects on those around you, this interview is packed with information you can apply to your day-to-day interactions. Let's get into it. Could you tell me about your first money memory or the most significant money memory you have from your childhood?
Got to go back a little bit. I don't know. I never really thought about you asked, but I would save it. I had like a little, it was like a little pouch. It was actually an old Crown Royal, one of those blue. I don't even know if you even know what that is, but it was an alcoholic beverage my parents used to drink. And it came in this blue kind of like velvet bag. And I thought the bag was so cool. It was blue and it said Crown Royal and yellow and it had like a yellow drawstring on it. And I actually keep my cash in there. And I put that like at the foot of my bed, under my covers. That's my memory. Like if I'm asking that question, I haven't really thought about that in a lot of years. That's my first memory of having that Crown Royal satchel that I kept my money in.
That's hilarious that just came out of the vault and you're like, whoa.
Out of nowhere. Jeez.
That's funny. We got to get you a replica.
I know.
Could you start by sharing a bit of your educational background and what led you to practicing marriage and family therapy?
How much time you got? I have a bachelor's degree in liberal arts and science with a specialization in psychology from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, go Illini. And then I also got a master's degree from there in labor and employee relations, which I used to go into corporate America for a short stint and was doing human resources work and recruiting. And then after that, I did some traveling. And after my travels, started a nonprofit and then went back to school to be a marriage and family therapist. Now, there's a whole lot in between all of those. I don't know how much you want or need, but that's my educational experience in a nutshell. But everything's a journey.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a diverse amount of experiences that all led up to your current profession. Do you mind speaking a little bit about the labor relations, how maybe you've been able to utilize that, or do you think you maybe don't translate those skills over to your current job from that major?
Not really. It's kind of like a relaunch of my life, my career after I traveled. So it's like my life before traveling and my life after traveling. So it's not that the things before traveling weren't relevant, but they got me to this experience I had around traveling around the world. And then from there, it was almost like a reboot and a rebranding, a rediscovery. It led me to working more in community, which led me to working more with people, with families. And then within community, I was made aware of this thing called marriage and family therapy, which I had never heard of prior to some of the community work that I was doing. But it seemed like a logical next step in what thought I was trying to do at that time of my life to kind of legitimize the work I was already doing with kids and with families. So it's like, okay, well, let me explore this degree and see how it helps me in the community. What I'm doing now is not what I planned on doing when I went to school.
That sounds like a lot of change. And so I'm actually wondering what your relationship with money was like throughout your time in school and then deciding to go back to school. And that's a lot to commit to the evolvement to where you are now. So, what was your relationship with money like at that time?
That is an interesting question. When I was in my teens and then 20s, my relationship with money was that I didn't have any and I wanted it, aside from still being under the support financially of my parents mostly. Be more realistic. I've always worked. So since I was 16, I've had a job and I've always known that to get things, you need money, and to have some independence, you need money. And at that time, independence from family, from parents, you need money. So at an early age, I believed in having a bank account. I had a checking account. I had a savings account. I saved money. I was able to buy my own first car. I was able to buy like my mom and stuff gifts and family. And so I knew that working was important to money, at least back at that time. So work and money went hand in hand.
It sounds like you definitely desired freedom, as most of us do, or at least the autonomy that financial stability can bring. So tell us more about CPR counseling. I know that you opened up your private practice. Has it been a year? It feels like it's been a year because I've always seen you having a private practice, but I know it's very recent.
So no, it hasn't quite been a year. I officially launched September 18th of 23. And September 18th was when I was approved to accept insurance. So I got paneled on Blue Cross Blue Shield, but I had incorporated about a year ago. And that was a whole journey to go into my own private practice because I was pretty happy at the Family Institute, which I don't even think I really talked about that. So I worked at the Family Institute. That's where I studied graduate work in marriage family therapy. I graduated from that program in 2009. And then I got a post-clinical fellowship with them for 2 years. And then in 2011, they hired me on staff. None of this was in my plan. This things just kind of evolved and unfolded. I think it just ran its course, and the pandemic really opened that up for me. Probably you think I've been in private practice longer than I have because I've been talking about it for so long, but it really just kind of crystallized over the course of the pandemic. And then coming out of the pandemic, started to put the wheels in motion to make it happen. And beneficial since last September, and it's been good so far. Been everything that I expected and then some.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to hear that it's been fruitful. I know that you're very much an advocate of going along with your journey. And if I've learned anything from you, it's to not put too much pressure on the things that you're pursuing because they'll fall in place as long as you're active and engaged. So it's just really cool to hear how you've been able to take on starting your business. And I'm sure there's been a lot of ups and downs. What is the topic of starting a business that you picked up quickly versus something that was really challenging?
I think the easy part for me was that I had a full practice that I just transferred over. Being a clinician and just doing the work, that part's always easy, I guess, quote unquote easy. It's a very comfortable thing for me to do. The business side of doing that, though, I'm still learning. It's not as complex as I maybe fantasized it would be. I have a couple people that do some contractual work for me, but I don't necessarily have any employees. So it's really just me. The electronic health record system I use is pretty simple and intuitive. There's not a whole lot to do. Once you get all the data in, you just press the right buttons and magic stuff happens. I think the challenging part for me to come, I haven't really tapped into this part yet, is the marketing side, because I haven't really needed to market myself. And I'm actually low key a little concerned once I do market and put it out there that I have to be ready for what's going to come my way because it is just me and I'm already full. So it's like, what am I advertising for? I wouldn't really be able to accommodate folks. So I would need some people working with me on a more consistent basis to be ready for that. But we'll see. I don't know how difficult it's going to be or not, but the social media world, and that's not my thing. We'll see how that plays out.
At least you're aware of the beast that you're about to face, because social media, just all the connections and staying on top of it, staying organized, and then along with having clients is such a challenge. At my internship right now, I'm doing a lot of administrative and marketing things that I've never done before on top of a 10 to 13 client caseload. And I'm doing that for 35 hours a week. And it's super fun, but I'm doing both sides. And I asked my boss to do that. I basically told her, I need you to help me structure my internship so I learn about the fundamentals of private practice and all the nitty gritty stuff you have to do as a business owner. Because I knew that the social media part was going to be hard, no matter what age you're at. Like I'm in my 20s and I'm telling you, it's not easy. Even just the creation of all the content is hard. Doing stuff for this podcast is hard, but I really like it. It's fun. But the editing, it takes a long
Yeah.
time. So have you thought about what if you brought on interns?
I'd be open to that. Matter of fact, the Family Institute, because they just started an online program. They just graduated their first round of online. So they're trying to do more as far as like getting their students clinical cases. They need practices to move them through because they're online. So they're all over the place. So I may start doing something with them around that in the fall where I take on an intern or two. The Family Institute would get them the cases, which would be cool. And they would just work under me.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you have it coming. You just gotta kind of survive. I feel like you're gonna start to
Just try to
get
get
that
through this
stuff.
first year.
Yeah, you could do it. So, can you tell us a bit more about what types of therapeutic services CPR counseling offers?
I'm a fully functioning behavioral mental health practice. I see individuals, couples, families, and I do groups. I also do some consulting work. I have a couple of clients that I do behavioral mental health support for their staff and teams, like summer programs. They're working with kids at Northwestern, and I offer and provide consultation around behavioral mental health issues. The clientele is fairly diverse. I have quite a few African American men, individual men on my caseload. I have couples. I work with cross-cultural and cross-racial couples, immigrant family systems. I haven't worked with as many kids since I've been in CPR, since I went into private practice. I have a few adolescents, so high school, a couple college students.
Wow, well, it's really cool to hear that you have been able to work with so many different types of people. When I think about the types of people or the demographics of people I want to work with for my financial therapy practice, I can't really think of a limiting number because so many people of all generations need help with their relationship with money. And so I'm wondering, in your experience, so yeah, you're not a financial therapist, but I've no doubt that you have seen some relationships. You don't have to share stories for confidentiality, but I'm definitely interested in the trends and perspectives that you've noticed of how money impacts our relationships.
Well, the big answer to that question is yes. I don't know anyone that doesn't have some relationship to money living in this society. It's just part of living in Western society, especially. Not exclusively, but in particular, because everything revolves around money. And whether you have it or don't matters. How much you have versus how little you have matters. And not that people coming in talking to me about finances per se or financial struggles, but it plays itself out even in just our relationship because I charge money for people to see me, right? And not everybody can see me because I charge money, depending on their financial, this, that, or the other. Everything is kind of tied up in that. If I didn't have to worry about living and paying mortgage and car notes and all that kind of stuff, I low key would do this work without charging people. But obviously that's not realistic, and it just doesn't work in the way this society works. Everything is an exchange, transactional. From that standpoint, there's times I'm not directly working with folks around their money issues, but when they can't pay or they're having struggles or they don't have insurance, being able to do this work is privilege because a lot of folks ain't paying $100 or 150 or 200 or 250, depending on the therapist, to talk about their problems. They can't do that. So there becomes this like divide of who's getting the service and who's not, and who's able to engage in the service and who's not, based off of money. Not exclusively. Some of it's just based off of belief systems and cultural dynamics and this, that, and the other. Some cultures that just not their thing, just doing therapy per se. But whether or not you can engage in the work depends on the money. And even if you're using insurance, you probably have a job that pays money, that pays for your benefits so that you can come do the work. So there's those types of dynamics that are just kind of embedded in society, and then just anybody that steps into my room, because before they come in, they have to register. They have to put a credit card on file. They have to know what my costs are. So all these things are playing out even before we sit down and talk about anything. And it does vary across age, and it's not necessarily a one size fits all, but typically the older and more established you are, typically you have more security around finances. The younger and less established you are, typically you have less financial security. I also see differences across races, where if I have any clients that are paying out of pocket, those typically aren't my people of color clients. Usually my white clients, they're paying either out of pocket or they have the best insurance that's covering everything, minimal deductibles, all kinds of things just kind of revolving around just simply being able to have a transactional relationship that revolves around getting paid.
Sounds like, in a way, you're saying that it's a bit difficult as a therapist because you're there to help people with their problems and talk through their problems, but the very first interaction of your relationship is transactional. So that's the opening of the relationship. Do you think that translates over in our personal lives in any ways? That the first introductions can be transactional, even if it's not just for money?
Yeah, you're delving into a whole psyche and kind of cultural dynamic that, yeah, even a hello and a goodbye is some type of a transaction. In certain cultures, you're expecting, if somebody says hello, you expect them to say hello back. You're engaging in this exchange, even just human to human, there's exchange. Now, transaction, I don't know, maybe that's a little strong because you're not necessarily, well, I'm only going to say hello if you say it to me or you pay me to say hello, right? It's not quite like that, but there is this exchange dynamic where there are expectations around engaging on a human level. I could go way down the rabbit hole on on that kind of a topic.
Yeah, we're going in the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That was a very insightful answer. I mean, everything's a transaction at the end of the day. I know one thing that I'm trying to promote throughout my podcast is embracing an identity and embracing your identity with money, because money habits translate over into other areas of life. So like what you just said, we're already traders of an interaction, where what you said with saying hello and goodbye is a transaction in a way. That's just out of respect to another person, but that's actively trading. So I try to just help people really try and see how money impacts everything in life. You'll start seeing money operating out of every conversation, every video you see, how money can apply. And that's just how you can work smarter with it. And then also work smarter in your awareness of other areas of your life that may be transactional or a trade in the way. So I think that's a really cool perspective. I appreciate you for sharing that. Does money help in developing relationships, or can it make it more complicated?
Yeah, it could be both, honestly. It could help and it could make it more complicated. That's when you start getting into like people and their relationship to money, because people's relationship to money tends to be an emotional relationship, or there's a lot of emotion embedded in it. And then there's other people's relationship to money that's kind of strictly business. But even if it's strictly business, there's still an emotional component, because if you don't have it, you're going to have a problem. I've never experienced poverty. Like growing up, I had working family members. Like my father worked, supported. I never like wanted for anything growing up as a kid. But once I left from the home and was kind of on my own, there was times I didn't have money. I wasn't alone. Like I could get support and help, but I was not generating income that I could support myself at various times of my life. And those times of my life tended to be more stressful. Even going back to school, that was a deliberate move to get some stability so that I could actually earn an income. Because prior to that, I was doing a nonprofit thing and I was hustling and grinding, and like that just got tiring and emotionally draining. So I just felt like I needed something. I needed kind of like that 9 to 5 energy, just so that I could have some consistent cash flow so that I could stabilize and be in a position to even do other things. I could have all the ideas that I wanted, but without income, it was really challenging.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. And I know a lot of other people that are emotionally challenged daily by finances or financially limited due to lack of consistent income. And I'm wondering what your perspective is of, do you need an adequate amount of money to be in a relationship, or how much money is enough to be dating somebody? Because dating somebody can be really expensive. I know some people that actually are not dating right now because they think to themselves that they need to get in a financially stable position before they can entertain the thought of caring for someone else. I've noticed a bit of avoidance due to financial instability of the dating world. So, what are your perspectives on how much money we should have before we start dating someone?
That is a very interesting question. I've never actually thought about that before. I guess my knee-jerk reaction is that it depends. It depends on what your intentions are around dating. What does it mean to date? Dating just for fun and companionship, for entertainment? Are you looking for a partner to like build and grow with? I'd be curious what's the motivation behind the dating, because if you find the right person, if that's your intention to looking for that right partner, then you build and grow and you communicate around the financial situation so that it's not like this stressful, or like I feel like, oh, they're going to want me to pay for everything, or I need to be in a position to pay for stuff. Otherwise, it's not. You can do cheap dates that are fun, if you're really trying to problem solve around it. But I don't know that there is a right or wrong amount of money to have to engage in the dating process. But just to be mindful, I think communication would be really important, so, and transparency around finances. If you feel like that's going to be a barrier to dating a particular individual, it might be a barrier in the overall scheme, generally speaking, because yeah, if you want to go out and have fun and do stuff, it does cost money. But if you're just trying to meet someone and build, then, just I think a healthy communication around it is like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I can afford, and we can have fun or whatever. But it ain't gonna be like going on trips to Mexico and Vegas and all this kind of stuff. But so I don't think that there's a right or wrong. I think it's just a matter on the individual and how transparent you're willing to be with whoever it is that you're trying to date. And if they're cool with it, cool. If they're not, then move on.
I agree with you. I was thinking the same thing, that there's not really a right number for when it's okay to date someone, because it's also, we all have different situations, different stages of life. And I'll say the dating age is 16, because that's when I was allowed to date, like 16 and up. Your money values change a lot. So I agree with you that also communication is key. I advocate a lot with communication with yourself, which is what budgeting is for, which means you should have watched my Monday episode about budgeting brilliance. But, anyways, I digress. Self awareness is super important. What are your thoughts on the development of self awareness? Everyone's on their own journey and it happens at different times. But are we ever at a point where we're so self aware that we truly know ourselves and our habits? Is there ever an age we reach that, you think?
I mean, to me, it's an ongoing journey. I mean, I certainly am way more self-aware, now than, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I can use that level of self-awareness to continue to grow and build. And there's always room to grow and improve, but I'm aware of the things I need to grow and improve in. And I'm aware of the things that I'm strong in. And I'm aware also there's maybe things that I'm not aware of. That piece of the pie is getting smaller and smaller over time. And as long as I continue to do the work.
It sounds like you're part of the Lifelong Learner Club.
Absolutely.
Yes. Good, good,
Lifelong learner.
good. Everyone listening to this podcast is a lifelong learner. They're in the club. Going along with the dating track, I'm wondering what your experience is working with families and couples, what the difference in dynamic is when a couple agrees on how money should be handled versus disagreeing or having different styles of living and trying to come together.
I mean, money problems are very typical when it comes to couples. It's up there with like infidelity and abusive stuff. I mean, it's kind of high up there when it comes to issues when there is a lack of connection around, yeah, like I said, how to handle it. If there's different perspectives, A lot of times in a lot of premarital counseling, usually money is one of the top things that gets talked about. Because the other thing with money and people's relationship to money, once you start getting your own money, like from that first job, it's you and your money. You're not typically having a relationship with you, your money, and someone else in terms of their involvement. They may benefit from, someone closely may benefit from, quote unquote, your money, but the relationship is with you and the money versus you, the partner, and the money. If you're not careful and, again, transparent, I think, about what your relationship is and what your expectations are, and in couples work, trying to find if there is a difference in how you manage it, then trying to find a common ground that you both agree on is really important. But when there's agreement, it's all gravy. But when there's disagreement, that's when it can get messy. And a lot of times, money and financial values come not just from the individual, but from families. You come out of a family, and typically you get your value systems around money from that family. And a lot of times, families aren't always matched up, especially if you come from a family that either has money or manages money well versus coming from a family that doesn't have as much money or doesn't manage their money well. Doesn't mean it can't be worked out, but our values get shaped in ways sometimes we don't even recognize. It's the question is, especially in therapy, can you recognize an unhealthy value or approach that you can work on and fix, or are you stuck, in your ways of thinking?
I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, because that's definitely very interesting. It's almost like you're speaking on the subconscious habits that we pick up from our family in all different ways and dimensions, but especially in regards to our behavior around money. So family is a subconscious accumulation of habits, while when we start dating someone, it sounds like if we want to become more serious with that person, that we become more reflective on our habits and how they may compare and contrast with the partner.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, some people are frugal or tight with their money. Some people are loose and free with their money. Some people are calculated and kind of very precise with their money. And there's probably benefit in all of those. And all those can also be extreme issues, anything in life, but having some kind of balance. It goes back to relationship and choices and some of that kind of unconscious, maybe influence that we get from the people around us and our loved ones and how we grew up. And then you bring that into a completely different world via a partner. And now it's being exposed. And now it becomes this thing is who's right, who's wrong. And to me, it's not really about that. It's just what's working, what's not working.
It's interesting because we talked a little bit about how there's different things in our life that are transactions or business that may not directly relate to money per se. And so that makes me think of marriage is a bit transactional in a way. I'm not married, but from what I've learned through my degrees and then also mentors and been exposed to healthy marriage examples growing up, which I'm very blessed with, but you're still making an agreement to merge more than just your love for each other, but also all of your assets, everything that you've brought in from previously before committing to a relationship. You're bringing in your entire being. And do you have to sacrifice some parts of yourself in a way? Because you can't truly just operate how you would operate by yourself versus in a relationship. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Finance, Fitness, and Finesse. A big thank you to Chazzè Roberts for sharing his journey and expertise with us. Don't forget to tune in next Savvy Scholar Sunday for part 2. Remember, financial literacy is key to building a better future. And with community leaders like Chazzè, we're one step closer to a financially empowered society. If you enjoyed this episode, help me learn with you and be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to elevate your wealth and wellness. I'm Jay Vick, and I'll see you on the next More Money Mondays episode. Until then, stay savvy, and if you don't know, now you know.